Mr. Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks and to include extraneous material on this resolution.
Without objection.
Thank you, sir. I also ask unanimous consent to place into the record an exchange of letters with the chairman of the Committee on the Judiciary on this measure.
Without objection.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentlewoman is recognized.
Thank you, sir. And I want to thank Chairman Royce and Ranking Member Engel for their leadership, for their support for human rights in China and indeed around the globe. I also want to thank my good friend, the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly, for joining me in introducing this bipartisan resolution that has garnered over 180 co-sponsors. Many may not know this, Mr. Speaker, but Mr. Connolly has been working on these issues ever since he was a staffer for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And I'm proud to have introduced House Resolution 343 alongside my friend from Virginia, a resolution that condemns China's ongoing gruesome practice of harvesting organs from prisoners of conscience and religious and ethnic minorities. Falun Gong practitioners have long faced an intensive persecution by the Chinese Communist Party, and according to Freedom House in 2015, comprised the largest portion of prisoners of conscience in China. I was extremely disappointed to read that the State Department's latest human rights report for China quoted a Chinese official's unsubstantiated claim that any harvesting of organs from prisoners would now be voluntary. China has been well known to produce the majority of organs it uses for transplants from executed prisoners, people who are deprived of their freedom, unable to give their voluntary and informed consent to donate their organs. These are the basic preconditions for ethical organ donation, which China rarely, if ever, meets. The regime of the People's Republic of China does not comply with the requirements of the World Health Organization for transparency and traceability in organ procurement pathways. And the number of voluntary organ donations in China continues to be much lower than the reported number of transplants, let alone the number of unreported ones. All of this points to unethical practices at the very least, and something much, much more inhumane and gruesome at the very worst, and leads us to conclude that China's claim to have ceased with illegal harvesting is a dubious one. The Chinese regime's brutal repression and human rights violations are well known, but it is the horrific treatment of the Falun Gong practitioners, Mr. Speaker, that is particularly egregious, yet does not receive the attention that it deserves. Followers of Falun Gong are among China's most vulnerable to state-sanctioned abuse, which them as likely victims to this ghoulish practice. And it is the latest reports of China seeking to conduct full-body transplants are true, then it could put these peaceful individuals in even graver danger. Last week, the New York Times reported that Chinese doctors are seeking to conduct full-body transplants. But again, with little transparency and the lack of ethical standards, one has to wonder, Mr. Speaker, how will these doctors, how will these scientists conduct their research and experiments? They will likely look to their prisons and target prisoners of conscience and Falun Gong practitioners specifically. The New York Times reported that China remains an international pariah that has long been dogged by ethical issues, yet its doctors remain undeterred by the horrid practices and plan on moving forward when they are ready. What will this mean for Falun Gong practitioners and other prisoners of conscience in China, Mr. Speaker? I shudder to think of their fate as a result of these inhuman experiments and macabre practices. But by passing this resolution, sir, we can send a message to the Chinese regime that we condemn this continued practice of persecution of Falun Gong practitioners, and it is sickening and unethical practice must stop, especially harvesting organs from non-consenting individuals. We cannot allow these crimes to continue. I urge all of my colleagues to support this resolution. And with that, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of our time.